Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at Mercury opposing Uranus. Mercury is in the sign of Sagittarius, has just entered the sign of Sagittarius, and is immediately making an opposition to Uranus in the sign of Gemini, which means there is some reception between the two planets, which is interesting. Mercury is now in a Jupiter-ruled sign, which also means Mercury is in its detriment. Its host, Jupiter, is exalted and creating part of the grand water trine. So we're going to look at all of those details, and then I'm going to give you a list of 5 things to watch for, given the perfection of this opposition today, which you probably will notice it's a very powerful transit, which is why we're focusing on it today. So that's our agenda. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell, turn on all the updates so you know when we're going live. I do have a live stream that I'm doing tomorrow. So if you want to come and join me for some Q&A, we're going to be doing grand water trine horoscopes for all 12 signs. Should be a fun, lively session. You can also catch the replay under the live links on my channel if you miss it. There will also be a monthly overview that'll be published tomorrow for the month of November as well. So some good things coming up on the channel. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. The big news for today in our promotions here is that you have just a couple of days left to save using the early bird rate for our first year course. We have just a couple of weeks left before we start our next program. It begins on November 15th. So just a little bit of time left to register. We hope to see you in class soon. At the end of today's content, there's an additional video tagged on. You can also find it here on the page, telling you everything you need to know about the program. It's a 1-year immersive experience. We dive deep into the roots of Hellenistic astrology, going into the theoretical, philosophical roots. It is a highly transformative program for people who want to take their love of astrology to the next level. I think it's a good thing to do to study astrology seriously at some point. If it's something you take in regularly, but haven't taken the time to get to know at a really deep level, you'll be surprised at how it transforms your life from the inside out to do so, as well as just giving you a much deeper level at which you can engage with your love and interest of astrology over the course of a lifetime. So I highly recommend this. It is, I think, the best thing that I've ever created are the programs at Nightlight. So the early bird rates are available until the 31st. That gives you just a couple more days to save. And then need-based tuition is there if you're someone who could benefit from saving a little bit of money on the course. Maybe you've got a really tight budget, or you're experiencing financial difficulties. The exchange rate in other countries is really high. Whatever the case might be, we want a sacred topic like astrology to be financially accessible. So you can choose within a sliding range what you'd like to pay for the course. And if that is useful to you and helps to make sure that you don't go outside of your means, hurt yourself. We don't want people, we want the investment to reflect what people can actually afford. So that is an important part of our mission at Nightlight. Please take advantage of that. And I hope to see you in classes soon. All right. Well, I've got a list of 5 things to watch for today. But before we get into the Mercury-Uranus opposition, let's break this transit down a little bit and give you the timeline. So here you can see as of Wednesday, October 29th, Mercury has just entered Sagittarius. And as soon as it does so, upon arrival into the temple of the Centaur, Jupiter sign, it is immediately meeting an opposition to Uranus in Gemini, which is Mercury's own sign. This is fascinating because it brings up the idea of oppositional thinking. Mercury loves oppositional thinking. Mercury loves opposites in general, loves the play of opposites and the dance of opposites, the contradiction, but also the paradox of how opposites are always a part of one another, even though they also seem like they can't get along. So a really interesting moment to free ourselves from stubborn thinking about things that we think have nothing in common or that can't get along. Perhaps an opportunity to be more original or innovative about things that appear contradictory. That would be one of the immediate blessings that comes to mind with Mercury opposing Uranus across these 2 signs. It's also fascinating to consider the fact that Mercury is traditionally debilitated in the Jupiter-ruled signs. This is because Mercury and Jupiter are like another pair of opposites, archetypally speaking, that are a part of one another, even though they're very different. Broadly speaking, Jupiter is like consensus. So if we have an ideal understanding of the way that physics works, or the law works, or the way that ideally the branches of government check and balance one another, or the way that astrology functions through its various rules and techniques, then we have some cohesive sense of understanding, or we have again like a sense of there's a consensus here. There's everyone says this is how it works, or this is how you do something. And Jupiter also represents faith in the broad sense of there is a broader meaning that can be trusted, even if you cannot perfectly explain exactly how it works. For example, many people believe in karma, although few can explain it. That was said famously in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita as well. When Krishna and Arjuna are conversing, Krishna says that few people actually understand karma, though everyone kind of understands that it's a thing, but few people understand how it works. Mercury is much more about the how it works part, the breaking down of a machine into its component parts, the various aspects of a language that together build the grammar or the syntax or the diction. So Mercury and Jupiter together, you could say, represent the part in the whole. Mercury and Jupiter represent the broad sense of intuitive knowing, faith, understanding, wisdom, whereas Mercury is more like the rational mind and the part of us that has to break things into parts and articulate them in order to build a sense of wisdom or understanding. I mean, you broadly speaking in astrology, you build a sense of craft wisdom through one delineation after another over many, many years. Suddenly you're a walking almanac of astrological symbolism, but that's been built through the craft delineations of Mercury over the years, right? So Mercury and Jupiter go together, but they're different. Mercury in a Jupiter-ruled sign is thus about how understanding is broken into its parts, how understanding, faith, a sense of wisdom, consensus, this is just the way that it is. One of the traditional parts of astrology in India that I really appreciate is that often things are taught and transmitted, and you don't just go, you don't ask your teacher to explain why, you just sort of accept it. Whereas in the West, there's often a much more Socratic way of doing things where it's like, well, tell me why. I need to know the why behind things. But both are valid forms of no. I mean, in any tradition that you ever learn, there's a certain way in which you just do what your teacher tells you to do. And then you learn for yourself how it works by just doing what you're told to do. And then on another level, you can't understand anything if you don't ever question it and get to the why behind it. So a really interesting moment for Mercury in the sign of Jupiter. Now, Jupiter at the exact same time is exalted in Cancer and a part of the grand water trine. So the background of this Mercury-Uranus dynamic is about a great confluence of water. Water provides an opportunity for reflection, for healing, for memory, for ancestry, family, emotion, the intelligence of the body. And so there's a profound gathering of water right now in the sky that is behind the opposition between Mercury and Uranus, which means the kinds of thoughts or the, you might say the changes in our thinking or the kinds of Mercury-Uranus signatures that we're going to consider in our 5 things to watch for right now are also being fueled by a very powerful configuration of watery planets. So this moment in what might be intellectual, ideological, mental, rational, or rooted in things like paradigms and belief structures, ideologies, is closely connected to the great convergence of water in the sky. So keep that in mind as we go. Here are 5 things to watch for in no particular order that I don't think you'll be surprised to see if you keep your eyes open and symbolic eyes, I should say, open, and notice it in your own life, in your own sphere, internally, externally, but also notice it in the world around you, in the people around you. I was impressed the other day. Mercury and Mars in the sign of Scorpio were coming together, and we were on our way home from a trip out to the West Coast to see my wife's brother. And as we were coming back, I was relieved that there were no major problems in our travel home while Mercury and Mars were conjoining. And I was like, whew. But as we got off the flight and we were walking through the terminal to the baggage claim, at another gate departing to catch a flight out of Minneapolis, a man was being arrested by the police for completely melting down and losing his mind. I don't know over what, but he was not being allowed to enter a flight and was being detained and restrained and all that stuff. And he appeared to me to be wildly intoxicated. I don't know, obviously, but I was like, oh, well, there it is. There's Mercury and Mars. And it's like a frag grenade astrologically. I'm picking up some shrapnel from Mercury, Mars, but it's not necessarily affecting my travel today. The point is that as students of astrology, you never go into a transit assuming where you might see it or how it may show up. And let me also say that although we assume, and I don't know, I guess it's fair to say that a personal experience of a transit has more, maybe more power to evoke change or reflection within us. Honestly, as students of astrology, though, we should be just as open to noticing the meltdown at the terminal and reflecting on its presence as an archetype that's happening external to us. I mean, why are the only relevant transits the ones that are happening to us personally is, I guess, my point. So keep these things in mind as you watch and notice for this in your environment, not just within yourself, of course. Again, I think it's probably where we always feel it there the most, but here we go. Number 1, when Mercury and Uranus oppose one another, that diametrical opposition is very creative in the way that it holds a tension between opposites, which can often pop off with Uranus like a little lightning bolt that leads to innovation or original thinking. So when you have an original idea, even if that idea doesn't get acted upon for a little bit right now, take note of it, because some of the most original, striking, new, different kinds of thoughts will often appear as Mercury is opposing Uranus. And if you write them down and stick with them, you'll find that they keep speaking. See, we often think of the events in a way overly linear manner. What I encourage you to think of is like when Mercury and Uranus collide, an artifact will show up in your life, but that artifact is like a living mantic device that will keep talking and keep doing things. Think of this as a moment where Mercury and Uranus are opposing one another, and that idea is like a very interesting talisman. And if you take that talisman and set it down somewhere, externalize it a little bit on your altar through a creative placement of something on the altar, or write it down, journal about it, sit with it, however you do. And what you'll find is that it's not just the moment that the thing appears that is connected in some linear fashion to what you need to do or what's happening, but it's more like the symbolism imbues itself in something that you can continue having a relationship with, but you have to note the appearance, the striking, original, innovative appearance of Mercury Uranus, and capture it symbolically somehow, and then keep speaking to it, and it will keep providing you with innovation and originality. So take that for what it's worth, but that comes from experience. I'm not making this up. Do it. Number 2 is foot and mouth syndrome. So what I love about this transit is that sometimes you just blurt out the craziest, wildest things that you absolutely should not say. Sometimes saying those things provides us with powerful personal or relational or professional breakthroughs. It's the thing that you don't want to say, but you do, and then you regret it, but then you don't, because it ends up having a positive effect, even though you might also have to apologize for it. So I don't like to tame wild horses when it comes to Mercury Uranus, because there's something more powerful about them just being wild. On the other hand, you do have to be careful, because you can break things and things can be irreparably damaged by the lack of thoughtful mediation when it comes to these mental or verbal impulses that appear suddenly. So just keep that in mind. Number 3, sudden insights or understanding. I was talking about innovative or original thinking, but there's also a slightly different category where, let's say it's something that you study. For me, that would be astrology, or maybe music, or what have you. And some new way of thinking about something that you have long thought about appears, or a sudden insight or understanding, almost like, I also want to call this like problem solving, where something you've been stuck on will suddenly get unstuck because of a new way of thinking about it that appears out of nowhere. Or something that you're very familiar with, suddenly your understanding of it shifts. So it's not just innovative and original thoughts that have never appeared ever before. It's also new thoughts about things that you have a long-standing relationship with. For example, sometimes the most liberating things that happen when Mercury opposes Uranus occur within a relationship. I've never thought about my spouse or my partner from this particular perspective before, but now that I do, it opens something in the relationship that was closed previously. So openings, awakenings, and where there's been blockage or something stuck, or maybe not progressing, or you've reached a plateau, suddenly a breakthrough, suddenly a shift. Now that shift doesn't mean that the content is, you've never seen it, never thought about it ever before. It could, but it could also be that there's some shift that's within an existing structure or area of life. So again, just a slightly different way of saying the same thing, but it's an important distinction to keep in mind, because sometimes we don't consider a breakthrough to be something simple that exists within a familiar structure, but those are breakthroughs as well. So keep that in mind. Number 4, emotional intelligence leads to breakthrough in thinking or beliefs. So the grand water trine in the background, and Mercury being in Jupiter's sign, Jupiter configured in that grand water trine, we're also thinking about the wisdom of the body. We're thinking about feelings, and we're thinking about in the environment emotionally and instinctually and physically, and how that environment permeates us and gives us feedback. If you're in a toxic environment, this is a transit where that toxicity can suddenly become vivid and clear and lucid, where it was unconscious or maybe existed below the surface and not in your understanding. Now that you do have an understanding of some toxin in the emotional or physical landscape of your life, you can do something. And so the breakthrough comes because your body is telling you what is healthy or not within the environment that you're associating with. On the other hand, it can tell you what to add more of. This feels good. This is healthy. This is the wisdom of what my body wants or needs more of, or what it needs less of. Or it can just be about an understanding of what feels good or what the emotional intelligence of life is speaking right now into existence that creates an immediate need for shift or change, which could be a little destabilizing at first, or could at the very least create some mental or nervous tension. But keep all of that in mind with everything else. Number 5, intellectual, verbal, ideological opposition. So when these two planets get together in opposition, not surprisingly, people fight over ideas and beliefs. It could also be that you allow yourself to consider an alternative perspective. One of my favorite sayings is 2 things can be true. We are so impatient intellectually. I love studying Taoism. I love the texts of the Taoist tradition because of how they always ask my mind to engage with the interconnection of things that look opposed. This color party and that color party, this position and that position, day and night, good and bad, feminine, masculine, all of the different opposites. There's a zillion of them, right? But the interplay of opposites is peaking when these two planets oppose one another. And that can lead people to feeling like I'm only safe if my side beats the other side. Perhaps there's some third possibility where 2 different things can be true. They can also not get along necessarily, but a question we might ask ourselves is, how do I hold the tension of 2 things that don't look like they should get along? If I learn to hold that tension, the truth of 2 different things that aren't necessarily the same but don't have to cancel each other out, what creative possibilities can come forth through the holding of that tension? That was a fundamental way of thinking about opposites that dates all the way back to the Pythagorean philosophy, Platonic, Neoplatonic philosophy, Hermetic philosophy, yoga philosophy, Taoism. It's there. It's all there. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. We think we live in a very different world than ancient Taoists, right? And in some ways, of course, we do. But in other ways, it's the same old shit, different day. We have opposites that pop through and come up, and they make us think it's do or die, it's this or that. Be careful of that kind of thinking right now. But at the same time, entertain the tension of opposites. Really hold on to their struggle and see what comes creatively. So anyway, that's it for today. I hope that this has been illuminating. I tried to make it sparky and fun, like the aspect itself. But next couple of days, we have a live stream tomorrow. So I'll be going live to look at the grand water trine, do some horoscopes, some Q&A. That ought to be fun. We also have the monthly overview for November, horoscopes for November coming up. The early bird deadline is the 31st. That's just a couple days away for the year 1 program. Need-based tuition is available. There's a video telling you everything you need to know about the program. One of the things that I think makes astrology worth studying precisely is that astrology is a Hermetic language built on opposites. And if you can learn how to think the way that ancient mystics did about opposites, my God, does it help with every single passage that we go through in life. Because most of the passages we go through in life, we consider difficult to the extent that we don't have imagination about opposites working in our mind, in our intellectual faculties. So this is a language that gives you that. And boy, does it give it to you if you spend a little quality time with it. So I hope you'll consider that pitch. Come along and study with us. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. This is our first year course in Hellenistic astrology, and it begins again this November. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the course, the format of the course, and how to register. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is this course about? Well, if you are not familiar, ancient Hellenistic astrology is the earliest and original form of horoscopic astrology. All of the subsequent forms and schools of astrology that have existed over thousands of years come from these philosophical and theoretical roots. And so what you're doing when you study Hellenistic astrology is you're going back to understand the why behind absolutely everything. Why were there ever such a thing as houses and signs in the first place? How were the planets ever assigned to rule various portions of the zodiac in the first place? How do you use the categories of essential dignity, and why were they ever created in the first place? If you're someone like me, you like to know the why behind things, because once you understand the why, then you know how to use things more intuitively. So really the point of Hellenistic astrology, in my opinion, is not so much about going back and becoming a traditional astrologer or just being traditional for the sake of being traditional, as much as it is about grasping the roots of the entire system and paradigm. When you understand those roots, you have more intuition and understanding, which allow for you to be much more artful and fluid in the way that you speak the language of astrology. We call this class Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic because while it is about going back to understand the philosophical, theoretical, technical roots of the tradition, it's also about fluidly bridging those things with modern astrology and all of its most unique contributions. For example, modern astrology has given us so much psychological depth and personal depth. And so in a modern astrological setting, you're going to get the ability to explore your own character, your own psychology, and you're going to be able to utilize astrology for a process of healing and personal transformation. But when you pair that with ancient astrology, and it's almost like predictive karmic analytics, you really have a full toolkit to work with. And so that's also a great mission of ours at Nightlight, is to bridge ancient and modern forms, which is why we call the program Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. So that's just a little kind of overview of the program. If you want to know more about the specifics of the curriculum and of the syllabus, what I encourage you to do is go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, go to the first year course, scroll down, and you'll see this over 12 months you'll learn about. And here you're going to see more of a detailed breakdown of the curriculum itself. I can promise you that if you've studied astrology in modern context, but you've never gone back to the ancient roots, while some of these topics may look familiar to you and you go, oh, I've already learned about that. Unless you've studied them from the Hellenistic perspective, I guarantee that you are not going to be familiar with this content. Hellenistic astrology is mind-blowingly new and interesting for most people. And if you've never studied it, again, don't assume that anything on this list is something you're going to be familiar with. In that way, the program is really ideal for a variety of different people. And I'll say more about that in a second. So what is the format of the course? Let's go to that next. Scroll down and you're going to see that the course includes 30 online webinars that I lead throughout the year. Over the course of a year together, I have 30 classes that are broken into different units of material. In between those classes, we have breakout study sessions with your course director and 2 TAs. They're going to lead you through Q&A sessions and tutoring sessions to make sure that you have a lot of support in between major units of study. In addition, we also have an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions year-round and get an answer within a business day in the student forum, where a lot of people also connect and build community. Lots of people in that forum also develop like little meetup groups outside of class. That's very common in all of our programs. It's a very community-loving, warm space where anyone's also welcome. Throughout the course, you're also going to find that for every lesson, if you're just there as a hobby student, you can just listen to the webinars. They're all recorded for you. So if you can't make the live webinars, everything is housed on the website as recordings. I'd say about 40 or 50% of our students are going to be following along at their own pace, whereas the other half might be attending the live webinars. But it's really kind of, if you can attend a few and then 1 week you got to be gone, the recordings are always there. You have lifetime access to everything in the course, so it's not a big deal. For every lesson as well, if you're someone who wants to go really, really deep, maybe you have the intention to practice professionally, this course is set up with an optional certification exam at the end from our school, from our program. So you can, if you want to build that resume and develop the credentials from our programs, you can do that, but it's optional, so you don't have to. And outside of every lesson, we have recommended reading. We have supplemental bonus content, all of which is optional, but it's there for people who might want a lot more, whereas some people will take the webinars themselves, and that'll be plenty. So it's really flexible in that way. Also, this is one program within 4 years of curriculum that are meant to go together. And so most people who come through our first year program will end up taking our second year program, where we develop forecasting and prediction and transit tracking techniques. Our third year program, which is aimed at counseling and psychology. So psychological counseling skills is our third year program. And then the Oracle Within, which is our exploration of the philosophical, spiritual roots of the divinatory oracular tradition of astrology. So there's a lot of material there. We also have another 1 year program in horary astrology for some people who want to add that predictive tool to their toolkit. So there's just a lot of material at Nightlight that this class is actually just one part of, which can be taken standalone, or for some people, they get into it, they're going to love it. You're going to hang out with us for 3 or 4 years worth of content. This program is ideal for a number of different types of students of astrology. I'll say that for starters. So let's see here. I'll stop sharing this. So we have like, there's a profile of the typical students who come through our courses. One is going to be people who just want a very guided introduction to ancient astrology because you've never had it before. Maybe you're only familiar with modern, and you want that guided, structured approach to learning traditional for the first time. Also, people who are brand new to astrology in general, there's no better place to start than at the roots of the ancient foundations. So whether you're a total beginner or just a beginner to Hellenistic, this is a great place to start. If you are someone who's been around astrology for a long time, but you've never had a guided, structured approach to Hellenistic astrology, again, this is a great place to start. I promise you, Hellenistic is very different than what you're familiar with, and you're going to need a guided and structured approach at some point in time. I also think for people who are looking for a lineage, which means not just a bunch of information, but a practitioner-specific based approach where you get to see a practitioner work with clients. You get to hear how a practitioner has prioritized different techniques and why. You're going to get a structured, spiritually grounded focus at Nightlight as well, where if you're looking for someone who practices astrology but also values grounded everyday spiritual practice, that's Nightlight. If you want a community that's been in the industry for a long time now, this is our 16th year of teaching programs and guiding students through trainings. So all of those things, if they matter to you, this is a great place to study. It's a warm community atmosphere. It's spiritually grounded. It's focused. It's academically rigorous. It's going to provide you the appropriate preparation for practicing professionally, especially if you go through all of our programs. But also for those who are just curious and love astrology for your own personal interest, this is going to be a great place for you to learn and grow and thrive and feel like you have a lot of support around you in the curriculum, the teachers, the community, as you're developing, what might just be a personal interest or spiritual hobby. So that is who it's ideal for. Finally, how you register. You go over to the website. I'm going to take you back there. And it's at the bottom of the first year page. You're going to find that the early bird rate is in effect until October 24th. You can save significantly off the cost of the course when you use the early bird rate, where you can pay in full, or use an early bird installment rate plan. Both are going to save you off significantly off the cost of the course. But also at Nightlight, it has always been our mission to make sure that astrological education is accessible for everyone. So please, if you are someone who would love to take this course, but maybe you can only afford a small amount of tuition per month, use the tuition assistance. It is there. All you got to do is plot, you fill out the little form, you tell us your situation. If you're on a fixed income, if you're on a limited income, if you're part-time, if you're in between jobs, if you don't make a lot and you're on that fixed budget, we understand. We don't want people to hurt themselves trying to study something that is spiritual that we feel should be very accessible for everybody. So if you're someone who could use a little help to make this program happen, for whatever reason, maybe you're a single parent or you're on disability or you're retired or you're on a fixed income, whatever the case is, use that tuition assistance. Also, people in other countries who have extreme, exchange rates. We get it. So just use the tuition assistance and we'll be glad to make sure that the price point is accessible. For us, as a spiritual topic, we're a business at the end of the day, but we believe that this is a spiritual topic. And so accessibility has been a part of our model for 16 years now. We've never not had one of our training programs with affordable sliding scale based prices for people who need it. So please take advantage of that. It's all there for you. I hope to see you in classes soon. And if you have any questions about the program whatsoever, direct them to us at info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see you all coming up here in November. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.